people have really interesting, unique sleep stories. I mean, there's so many things that happen at night and we don't talk about it and we don't normalize it.
You have had one of the most successful campaigns on Indiegogo.
It was clear that if somebody created a really compelling sleep headphone, you would basically be creating a market.
Raising over $5.5 million. What were the crucial steps in your eyes to be able to pull that off?
The very first thing that you have to optimize for is building a product that people want to buy. It sounds very simple. It's hilarious how many people don't actually take it seriously.
Rockwell, thank you so much for joining me for the conversation.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You have had one of the most successful campaigns on Indiegogo with Oslo. Today we're going to be talking mostly about Ozlo Sleep, a beautiful looking device that you have built and launched now to help people get better sleep.
And you mean this thing?
This is what it looks like. Exactly. I have been fortunate enough to join you for the summit in Baja California in Mexico. And I was gifted a pair of those beautiful looking headphones. So I have been testing it out, and that inspired me to reach out to you and ask you to hop on the show and tell me more about it, how it came along, and what are the intricacies of getting great sleep, but also to balance it with calming our busy mind. So that's pretty much what inspired me to take on this initiative.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I'm so happy that you've got a chance to use your Sleepbuds. Hopefully you love them, although I think we're going to have like a live feedback session sometime in the podcast where you're going to tell us what's great and not great, which I'm all ears for. Always our internal motto is like iterate your way to success, right? You're never going to be perfect. It's just you got to take one step at a time. So we've certainly done that at Oslo. Through the crowdfunding campaign, through all the feedback we've gotten from beta testers. Now we're into general availability. You can buy our product in 30 plus countries. You can buy it on Amazon in the US, but it didn't start there, right? There were a lot of steps that had to happen in order to get there. And it was very much an iteration process. So a bit about my background before diving into Oslo. I graduated from Cornell University in economics. At the time, I was working at a medical software company called For Patient Care. I was literally a lowly remote tech support agent. I was just, remoting into doctors' computers, like fixing their medical software effectively. And eventually worked my way up the corporate ladder there and became president of the company over time. Grew it, scaled it. It was eventually acquired by Essilor, a much bigger company. And then I got into the mobile app game after that. So I was building sleep apps and wellness apps to help people beat their anxiety, their depression, their insomnia, all sorts of health topics. And it was in that work that we had a contract to produce audio for something called the Bose Sleepbuds. And if you've never seen the Bose Sleepbuds,
we're going to see it now.
These are the Bose Sleepbuds, right? So they are tiny little earbuds that block out noise and help you sleep. And we kind of joke internally that it takes a company the size of Bose to make earbuds that don't stream any audio. So these don't stream any audio. They look like they do. They look like they're Bluetooth earbuds. They're not Bluetooth earbuds. They are very fancy earplugs that play white noise. That is what they do.
And that's it.
Right?
Nothing else.
That's it. There's nothing else that they do. And they were very good at that, right? Like there's a lot of people that loved that. They wanted to just block noise. They wanted to listen to their white noise. They didn't care about streaming. That's fine. But there's a lot more people that do care about streaming, effectively, right? Especially if, as a Bose product, people think Bose as headphones, right?
Right. It's music. Really it's audio.
That's what you think. Yeah, totally. So, we had a contract with Bose producing audio for the Sleepbuds. The idea was Bose was going to acquire my app company, roll it into the health division at Bose, and then everybody was going to be happy. Well, I got a phone call one day and they're like, "Hey, Rock, we're so sorry. We're actually shutting down the entire health division." And so Sleepbuds, and it's like, and so Sleepbuds and several other products basically were killed overnight. And that was very unfortunate for us because we had been working for several years on that Bose acquisition deal and we were very excited about it. But it opened up an opportunity that, some adventurous folks could potentially acquire the Sleepbuds IP, roll it into a new company, and relaunch it to the world. And so there were three engineers. The folklore story is there's three engineers at Bose that decided that they wanted to take that journey. I was there to help along the way as an early advisor. Eventually, I joined the company as CEO. And that's effectively what happened. We saw the promise in this product of what it could be, right? Like, Bose was for strategic reasons and their own internal reasons, they wanted to pivot away from health. They didn't want to do Sleepbuds anymore. But for anybody that had surface area with the product, we were like, that's crazy. This product has so much potential. If you could just add streaming, if you could add sensing, if you could really like fulfill the promises of the product, it would be enormous. It would be huge. And so that journey was started. And it was a windy road. Ozlo raised capital. We acquired the IP. We re-engineered it from the ground up. Like most people don't realize, they think. So you look at this, and you're
from far,
these two products,
it looks very similar.
Yeah. It looks very similar. What you don't realize is that 95%
is different.
of this is different, right?
Wow.
In order to actually accomplish all of the new bells and whistles, we had to re-architecture the entire system.
So before we dive into the specifics of what you have built, I have a feeling that with the IP, you also indirectly bought a massive community of people that were craving a product like that.
Yes. So the thing is, you have to earn those customers. You have to earn that community, right? So they will come to you and they'll say, hey, that's really interesting what you're doing under the hood there. Is this worthwhile to pay attention to? And the question is, do you have a story and a product and a company that is worth them paying attention to? Because people's attention spans will go, right? And so,
especially these days.
So the question is, are you doing something that's important enough? Are you doing something that's worthwhile enough? So yes, you do have an advantage in that you get their attention for a little bit, but if you don't keep their attention and if you don't respect kind of their interest, and if you don't show up in a big way, then they just go elsewhere. Like the market moves on, they go to something else.
What do you think was the trigger that made it so appealing in your case?
I think there was a number. Like I don't think it's just one thing, right? So if we think about the story in its entirety, we have the legacy component of these are folks that many of the folks at Oslo actually worked on Sleepbuds, and so if you liked Sleepbuds as a product, there's a decent chance that you might like what Oslo is going to do, Oslo's version of the Sleepbud. So yes, there's that legacy component. I think there was a branding component. Oslo as a brand is fundamentally different than Bose as a brand. And the brand ultimately is made up of the people that are here. And while we do have, a bunch of folks that came from Bose, we also have a bunch of folks that didn't come from Bose. And that has made up our own kind of internal mixture of a belief of science and technology and art. If you go to our story page on the oslosleep.com website, you can read our story and like how we think about what we're doing. And one of the things that's really important to me is to basically cut through all of the noise and to find the actual signal, like what actually matters. And so you have we exist today in a moment where we have all of these devices that are trying to tell us about ourselves. You have watches and bands and rings and straps and like all these things.
I got it all.
You have it all. And we have all of these things that are effectively telling us that we're too slow. We don't exercise enough. We don't eat well enough. We don't sleep well enough. Basically, we're just not enough as human beings. And that, I think, is a really dangerous message, especially when you realize that many of these devices don't actually solve the problem. They just tell you about the problem over and over and over again. And don't get me wrong, I like many of these devices. They're cool devices. They do interesting things, and they can be used as really beneficial tools if you use them in the right way. But for a lot of people, they don't use them in the right way. And that's why you get things like orthosomnia. Do you know what orthosomnia is, Lubo?
Yeah, basically you feel based on what the results of the tracker tell you. Or you have anxiety that you will get bad results.
Yeah, so the orthosomnia is like you're lying awake at night worried about what your sleep tracker is going to say. Which is, it's like your sleep tracker was supposed to help your sleep, and now you're telling me it's keeping you up at night, right? Yep. It's counterintuitive. It's like it's counterproductive. Effectively.
Yeah, we don't want to be in that situation for sure.
No, we don't want to be in that situation, and ultimately, we want to create an environment in which the things that you're using actually help you solve the problem, and ideally, just solve the problem, right? Because ultimately, what people want is they want their problem solved. They don't want like fancy dashboards of information telling them about the problem endlessly. They just want the problem to be solved, right? And so at our core, at Ozlo, the thing that we care most about is quieting the noise. That's what we care about, right? And that noise effectively comes in two flavors. There's the external noise. It's like, oh, your partner is snoring, your kids are running around the house, your neighbors are noisy, there's coyotes outside of your window, like whatever it might be. And then there's the internal noise. Yep. It's I'm up worried about my work or my finances or my family or whatever it might be. And our job is to quiet that noise, both externally and internally. And, externally we quiet it by literally creating this earbud that seals your ear off and plays you specially crafted sleep sounds that help create this sound barrier for you while you're trying to rest. And then for internal noise, we allow you to stream whatever puts your mind at ease. So if you want to listen to an audiobook or a podcast or meditation or the Calm app or whatever you want, right? Like we allow you to stream and listen to whatever you like that helps you relax. And so that's really what we're here to do. We're here to quiet that noise.
And you mentioned earlier that you have climbed quite nicely the career ladder, but then you decided that it is worthwhile for you to join as a CEO. What was your primary motivation back then, if we take a little step back, just looking at you, not looking at the mission of Oslo?
I think I've been on this journey for a long time, right? So even when I was doing the sleep apps, the number one thing that people would say was, hey, we love the audio content, but how do I listen to it at night? Like if I put it on the phone speaker, it bothers my bed partner. And if I use AirPods, they're not comfortable to sleep in. And way back in like 2019, I wrote an article called The Best Headphones for Sleep. And my summary was, there are no good headphones for sleep, effectively. And, everything that had basically significant trade-offs, there was no kind of perfect device. And it was clear that it was a really big problem, though. It was clear that if somebody created a really compelling sleep headphone, you would basically be creating a market. Nobody really understood how big this market was and is. Even still, like we're growing very, very fast and people don't understand how big this market is. They don't understand the dynamics of it. They don't understand what actually moves the needle and what's important. But I've been on this journey for a long time of how do you get great rest and bring great sleep to the world. And there's components of it that are software. There's components now that are hardware. There's components that are experiential. Everything has to come together in order to really kind of knock it out of the park, so to speak.
So basically, it was just a natural evolution of your journey to stick with the product, because you have been building up the foundation for that for a long time.
Yeah, I think also, early in my career, it was B2B healthcare. So for patient care, we were doing patient engagement services, and it was pretty boring software. Like doctors would rarely email us saying, "Oh, thank you so much for optimizing our revenue." Like we would rarely get thank yous for that work. Every day in the consumer digital health space, I get a thank you, right? So that happens in my app life, that happens in Oslo. Every day somebody says thank you. Every day somebody says, "Hey, this really impacted me." And that, I think, for me is a really important motivator. I want to feel like the things I'm doing matter and that people actually care about the work that I'm doing. And getting that direct consumer feedback from having that direct customer relationship is really powerful.
How did you go about basically maintaining that community and building up on that community to be able to have a very successful campaign on Indiegogo and raising over $5.5 million? What were the crucial steps in your eyes to be able to pull that off?
Oh my gosh, so many. If we start thinking about it and breaking it down, I think the very first thing that you have to optimize for is building a product that people want to buy. So like there's this very famous advice from the startup school, Y Combinator, build a product people want. Like, it sounds very simple. It's hilarious how many people don't actually take it seriously. And because of that, find themselves having built a product, they spent all this time, effort, and energy, all this money, and then they find out
no one wants
this
it.
thing. Nobody wants this thing. It's like, if you look at the analysis of why startups fail, something like 75% of startups fail because effectively they built something that nobody wants. It's not because, they didn't have enough money or they didn't, there was like marketing issues or something. It's because you just didn't build something that people want. That's it. It's as simple as that. My advice, like my alteration on that advice, is build something people want to buy. Because if you build something people want, but they're not willing to actually exchange dollars for it, then
what's the point?
You have a strong problem. You have like a very strong problem. And I think somebody's willingness to pay is a really interesting early indicator of how much product market fit that you have. Like how much do the people in your target market actually want this product, right? It's like, how are they willing to put dollars to it? And so when you're talking about, creating a successful, any kind of campaign, but let's say crowdfunding campaign, the very first thing that you have to answer is, are you painting a dream that people care about? Because in the crowdfunding campaign, you're not even delivering the product yet, right? Like ultimately what you're doing is you're painting a dream of what you want to exist in the world. And the question is, did you do enough homework? And did you de-risk enough that whatever you're launching actually has strong product market fit, actually is a product that people want to buy? That's number one, right? I think number two in our case is that things don't make themselves. It requires people, right? Like maybe sometime in the future when AI gets more sophisticated, things will just make themselves, right? That's not what happens today. Especially in hardware, right? Like software is, I think, pretty tremendously significantly easier than hardware. Hardware is way harder and a lot more risk. And so but again, you're not talking about the delivery of the product in launching the crowdfunding campaign. You're talking about selling the dream is effectively what you're talking about. And we have some incredible people on our team that are very, very good at selling the dream. And so a core component of our own success is that we had the right people to promote and sell that dream, like craft it, promote it, sell it, spread it. Like we have an incredible group, both internally and externally, of folks that really helped us sell that dream. So I think those to me are two big ones. Community building. So like, okay, you launch the campaign, you get some initial momentum. How are you treating these people? When somebody goes on your Indiegogo page and they go to the update section or the discussion section, how often are you updating people? How often are you, when they comment, are you responding to the comments in a timely manner? What is the quality of responses that you have? Like when we talk about community building, people oftentimes glaze over the very important fundamentals of community building. When somebody comes into your home, how do you greet them? If somebody comes into your home and you're sitting on the couch watching TV and you don't even say hi to them, does that feel like a welcoming environment? Does that feel like a welcoming community?
Not really.
No, not really, right? If instead somebody comes into your home and you get up and you're like, oh my God, Jonathan, I'm so excited you're here. Like, hey, I made you this fruit plate. Like, it's like,
right.
Have some nachos and chips. Like, you want something to drink? Like, it's a completely different, you react completely differently if somebody welcomes you into their home like that versus doesn't even get up to say hi. And I think this is true also when you're talking about crowdfunding. Like somebody's coming to your page, they're engaging with your content, they're engaging with your product. How do you treat them, right? When they have already put in funds to back your project, how do you treat them, right? This matters. And so like so often I see in crowdfunding campaigns, you can go to a product's page, they barely put out any updates, they barely respond to comments. If they do respond to comments, they're very defensive. They don't give realistic projections for when they're going to deliver things. I mean, it's like on and on and on. The commonplace problems, it's like, and people just, they do the same thing. They just like fall into the same trap. And it's like, ultimately, your community is only going to be as strong as how you show up to support them.
This is it.
I mean, it's like ultimately the party at your house is only going to be as good as how much you show up as the host, right?
How long did it take you actually from kicking off the campaign to actually delivering the product?
So we kicked off the campaign at the end of August. There were some delays in our campaign. So I think it took about 3.5 months longer than we had initially anticipated to deliver, which I think in the pantheon of crowdfunding campaigns is actually...
It's extremely rapid, isn't it? Like
yes, it's very rapid.
Like there are like many examples, and those are even the successful examples when you pay for something and it gets delivered 2-3 years later. That I think is still considered a successful crowdfunding campaign, right? In other examples, like you back something that never arrives.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so we had initially projected out that we were going to deliver in November, and we ended up delivering at the end of February, beginning of March, roughly. So
that's still very rapid.
Yeah, it's like, again, on the scale of delays, we're probably one of the fastest Kickstarter Indiegogo campaigns ever, frankly. But, during that time, we had to deal with a lot of backlash where people were like, hey, this is delayed. That's not cool. When are you going to ship? What's going on? Are you a scam? Like this one was always the funny one to me. It was like, you guys are a scam. It's like, man, if we're a scam, we are a super elaborate scam because you could go on TechCrunch and read how we just raised a bunch of money. You could read all these press publications everywhere. it would be a very elaborate scam. And so, but we dealt with that stuff. And
Even those
people.
exist.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but like during that time period, we started building our communities outside of just the crowdfunding platforms. We started going on our subreddit, became very popular. So if you go, we have a very active subreddit. If you go to reddit/r/Oslo, so you can go see, like, we very lightly moderate the content in there. You'll see stuff that's negative. You'll see stuff that's positive. You'll see stuff all around the board. And ultimately, it's a place it's like the town square of Oslo. Like, people can go and they can say whatever they want to say. And we jump in there, we interact with folks, but they could see that our authenticity, we would come to the table always authentic. Like, hey, whether you're happy or you're mad, like, we're here to meet you where you are, and we're here to be authentic and give you real answers. And that helped tremendously in building those communities, because people could see, hey, like, these people mean well. They're doing their best. They're making great progress. Like, they're engaging with us actively. Like, how often do you ever see a CEO jump onto a subreddit on a routine basis and like comment on people's posts and like engage with them? It's rare, right? But I look at it as one of my jobs is to have a direct line of communication consistently with our customers, right? Like, to talk to them, to understand their hopes, their dreams, their worries, their fears. Like, what do they want this product to be? What are the jobs that it needs to do for them? And to take all of that information back and deliver it to the team of like, hey guys, this is what our customers are saying. This is what they're feeling. Like, how do we iterate one step closer to delivering on the mission?
What would you say were some of the intricacies and obstacles on the hardware front to put it all together? Because, like, you have taken the IP from both a big company with a lot of resources to put behind the product, and then you acquire that IP, but you basically are on your own, and you have to recreate the same level of supply chain and go beyond, right? Because you wanted to increase the complexity of the product quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous engineering challenges. If you go on our website, on the Sleepbuds page, we have a size comparison section where you can see what Sleepbuds look like compared to other household items like a dime or a Lego head or a Hershey's chocolate kiss or something. And you see, it's like, this is a mind-bogglingly small device. It's very, very small.
I have a story related to that afterwards.
Yeah, actually, here. So like you have the Sleepbuds, right? And so these tips are squishy, right? And they come in different sizes, so they can fit all sorts of ears. But if I take the tip off, effectively, here's the Sleepbud, okay? And then here is an AirPod, right? Like, you can see kind of the relative size difference between these two.
We got the visual aid. I love it.
Yeah. So it's a really small device. It's a super, super small device. And so what you're effectively saying is that this thing has to have 10 hours of battery life. It has to do biometric sensing. It has to be able to do Bluetooth streaming. It has to be able to have onboard sleep sounds, so you can completely shut off the Bluetooth radios and just listen to local playback. Like, it has to have a built-in alarm. It has to have a sleep timer. It has to do all these things, right? These things aren't free, right? Like, you have to do tremendous amounts of engineering in order to make this happen. And yes, there was some level of head start from the Bose IP, but we had to re-architecture the entire system because the chipsets changed. So, the Bose Sleepbuds, they didn't stream audio. To add streaming required a lot of hardware changes, right? And so, with an architecture change, you're basically learning many lessons for the first time, and there's so many things that we could talk about. We could talk about how we were a month away from launch, And one of our chipset providers were like, hey, we're actually end of lifing that chip that you're using. That's a core piece of your system. So could you upgrade to the new chip? And, it's like anybody that does hardware, it's like a chipset change right before launch is crazy. It's totally insane. And so, we had to do things like that where, there were problems there. We've had problems where, so to give you an idea, there's 376 parts in the Sleepbuds. 376 parts.
It's a lot of parts for such a tiny device.
Yes, it's a lot of parts for such a tiny device. If any one of the parts doesn't show up at the manufacturer, congratulations, you don't build. Right? Like if you have 375 parts, you don't build. Right? It's like, oh, almost is not good enough. It's like so. We had a situation with one of our suppliers had a cybersecurity attack against them and shut down production for 30 days. You can't possibly predict that one of your suppliers is going to have a cybersecurity attack. You also can't predict like how quickly they're going to get operational again and be able to start delivering you inventory.
I have a feeling that if you have 370 components, the likelihood that one of the suppliers is going to have any sort of issues is very, very high.
Correct. And so you have to source this stuff way ahead of time, right? And so you have to build your own internal inventory to deal with those bumps. But when you're talking about being an early stage startup, that's very different than if you're Bose, right? Like what you can pay for, the amount of inventory that you can hold, what your manufacturer will do in terms of sourcing materials for you and what time frame, all these things, like it's totally different from a big company to a small company that's starting out. And in fact, most manufacturers do not want to work with startups, right? We move around too much, we change our mind too much, we pivot too much. That is death for manufacturers. Manufacturers need clear, consistent, continuous, like it's just the guidance that you want to give them. It's like a train. It goes one way. And if at any time you need to stop or you need to change direction, it's going to be time consuming, right? Like it's not a Ferrari. It's not going to stop on a dime.
Yeah, but at the same time, they have to figure out a way how to collaborate with startups because some of them will become unicorns, right? And that's what they want, right? They want to be around the startups that will go extremely fast and that will keep them busy for the years to come also.
Maybe some manufacturers do, but most manufacturers
they don't want to put up with that.
I don't want to put up with that. Right, so we've been very lucky in our manufacturing relationship and partner. They've been very accommodating in many ways. They've helped us build and grow and get to the point that we are. And so, gosh, there's so many challenges when you're talking about the hardware space. Like even talking about iteration. Let's say you mess up something. It could be a hardware component of some kind. Maybe it's a hinge, maybe it's a magnet, maybe it's a soldering process, maybe whatever. It's like there's something there that gets messed up. And in software, when something gets messed up, we say, okay, we file a bug report, we go through the machinations, we fix it, we test it, we push it out to production. Okay, everybody gets it, hunky dory. Like that process could happen in literally hours if you really wanted it to. I mean, and if you're a solo developer, it could happen in tens of minutes,
Right.
It's like it can happen quickly. In hardware, you screw something up, you're talking about massive cost and massive time. Just like insane, totally insane.
Huge trickle-down effect also, right? Because
Yes.
as you mentioned, one thing affects another and like it rarely stops.
Yeah. So, I mean, building a hardware startup is risk upon risk upon risk upon risk. effectively, many miracles had to happen in a row for us to get to this point.
That's why I love talking to hardware entrepreneurs, because building hardware is hard, and I have picked my career in software to go the easy route.
I want to change that quote. Building hardware is not hard. Building hardware is insane. Building hardware is totally insane. You have to have some like screws loose to like want to try. I mean, like effectively, it's so insanely difficult that and the capital requirements and the things that have to go right, I would not recommend this to anyone. It's like don't become a hardware startup founder. That's my advice to you.
I wanted to provide a bit of unsolicited feedback on the product. But when you talked about the size of the device, sometimes I have hard times finding it in my bed in the morning, because I totally love the fact that I can listen to a podcast or YouTube video. And I figured that for me, like somewhere between 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes is the right length of like an audio that I want to listen to before I fall asleep. Then I think that the 2 hours of white noise is amazing, because I think it like helps me to transition from like listening to the audio to actually falling asleep. But then like I have a generally very quiet environment when I sleep, so I tend to take the buds out throughout the night, but I always like put them somewhere, so I keep looking for them in the morning. But
it's very important. They don't fall out of your ears. You purposefully take them out.
I take them out. That's true. They generally don't fall. I think the fit is pretty good, but yeah, I just after like this initial part of the night, I just for some reason feel a little better. There are some nights when I keep them on for full night, but most of the nights I take them out. And it also took me a little while to figure out how to basically balance between Bluetooth or no Bluetooth, because like once you shut down the Bluetooth, you have no way to control the earbuds anymore, which I think was a pretty interesting software challenge to make sure that you guide users the right way so they know what to do. Because on one side, you want to make sure that all the connections and the Bluetooth shuts off at some point when you are not streaming, or when you want to basically have a nice, calm, relaxed sleep. At the same time, it takes a little bit of getting used to figure out how to work with it exactly, or at least it did for me.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, I think there's a lot of folks that immediately think that Sleepbuds are going to be the AirPods for sleep. And in many ways, they have that form factor. They're really comfortable. You can side sleep in them. They block out noise really well. And so in that way, there's similarities. But I think sleep is people have really interesting, unique sleep stories. If you start asking people about what a night looks like for them, you'll start getting answers that you'll never have believed, that you just didn't even know what they were.
Tell us what's been the wildest.
I think the wildest are the most unfortunate ones. The wildest are the ones where, for example, someone's partner suffers from some kind of syndrome that has them waking up in night terrors and like kicking and screaming and punching, and it's like I've known people in which their partner could literally attack them in the middle of the night, just like completely asleep, can just attack them, right? Or like wake up screaming at the top of the, like imagine you were sleeping next to somebody who at any time could wake up and just like scream like a banshee effectively and like say some crazy things, but they're sleeping, right? That stuff is, I think, it's wild, and it's very unfortunate, like because people end up like they have to sleep in separate rooms, or it causes relationship problems. There's also a lot of folks, you don't necessarily think about this, but I remember when in the app days, when we asked people why they were using Kazizz or for a sleep product, one of the top answers was their partner had died. And so, it's like they had slept next to somebody for a long time, and now there wasn't anybody there, and they felt really alone, right? There's stories like that, right, that are really like, it tugs at the heartstrings, and you're like, you don't think about them because you don't experience it, but for a lot of people, they do experience it, and that's their life. There are crazier stories of people like, oh, sleepwalking, getting into a car, driving while they're sleeping. It's like you have all of those stories as well.
Oh gosh.
You have the stories of people that have to go to the bathroom like 10 times a night, right? So their journey is that they barely get any deep sleep. And so they have to go through life effectively just working on light sleep all the time with very little deep sleep. I don't know, like you just run into just so many stories. You run into the people that have like really long wind down routines where it takes them 60 minutes. Like they have to take a bath, and then they turn on candles, and then they meditate, and they do all these things in order to like get ready for bedtime. But what I want to really more point out is that whatever your individual sleep story is, there's a lot of people like you. Like your story is unique in the sense that, this idea that people just are ready for bed, hop in bed, have 8 hours of sleep, and then wake up, like that is normal, is actually not normal. Like it for many people, it would be ideal, but for many people, that's not what it looks like for them, right? They wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, stressed out about a presentation, and then they can't get back to sleep, or their kids are struggling, and so they need to be up in the middle. I mean, there's so many things that happen at night, and we don't talk about it, and we don't normalize it. And ultimately, one of my biggest messages is like, it's okay. Like whatever unique story that you're going through is okay to go through. It's okay to talk about. It's okay to get help with. Like you're not the only person going through something unique at night. There's a lot of people that are.
That there's a lot on that for sure. And now that you were talking about all of those examples, it really resonated with me. And I have to say that I love having people on the podcast that are working on something for a great cause. And I feel like there is a clearly great cause behind Oslo. So I love hearing about all of that. What I wanted to get to next is, I like software, I like digital products, and you have an app that you use to control the earbuds. But there is one section that is right now a little empty, the My Sleep section. And I wanted to ask, now that I have a prime opportunity to be talking to the one and only, the mastermind behind all of this, what is the intention for that section to be? Because you mentioned the sensors being part of this tiny device. And I assume it might have something to do with that. At the same time, you mentioned that, in your understanding, it's not that you want to be fixing the problem. You don't really want to be telling people about the problem and its existence, basically. So what is going to be your take in that what we could call middle section of the app?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I first want to call out, although I appreciate being labeled as the mastermind behind Oslo, it takes a village. It takes an incredible group of people.
No doubts, no doubts.
With a long. So I appreciate the compliment.
I did not mean it literally, but I have a huge respect for you also.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the way I think about it is this. The thing that you should practically care about is the stuff that disturbs your sleep. It's not that useful and frankly that accurate to tell you that you slept 30% in deep sleep and 15% in light sleep and 15% in REM and 20%. It's like, this is not meaningful because first of all, there's not really good metrics of at an individual level what percentage you should be getting. That doesn't exist in the clinical literature. It doesn't exist that Lubo, I can look at your sleep data and tell you, oh, you should be getting 23% deep sleep instead of 18% deep sleep. It's just noise. It's just effectively telling you information that you can't process. Like there's nothing you can do with that information that's realistic. And now some people might say, but Rockwell, I like seeing that information because I can compare it across days or I can compare it across activities or what I'm doing and all of that. I can try to find the signal to the noise. And to some extent, I think that is a decent argument. Asterisk on the fact that this data at the consumer level is not accurate enough.
Well, that's what I wanted to add. If I may provide a quick side note that I love the day-to-day comparison. What I love even more is a holistic, let's say, monthly or annual view. But if you try to wear 3 different trackers, you have an 8-sleep mattress also, which is my case. You technically have 4 sources of data about your sleep, and I can attest that they are wildly different every night. And I don't think that there is any correlation between them. I just like for me, the very high level overview is something that I take as a guiding star because that's probably the best takeaway. But I could not agree more with you that the precision and the way how we measure and estimate, especially across different devices, wild.
Totally wild. And it's leading to all sorts of weird problems where people are taking this data too literally. And then they're assuming, like they go to their doctors and they're like, yeah, look at this, look at this pattern. And the doctor's like, you can't take this as reality. Like this is not meaningful of anything. And so I do want to address, a really important thing that a lot of folks don't know. So one of the things that people jump to is they'll say, hey, my tracker of choice, a ring, a watch, a band, whatever it is, there's clinical literature that's comparing this device compared to polysomnography, which is the gold standard of sleep analysis. The thing you need to understand about polysomnography, if you ever go and do it, like you go into the sleep lab, like they hook your eyelids and all these diodes and all this stuff they put on you, right? They're measuring your eye movements, they're measuring your EEG, they're measuring your heart rate, they're measuring all this stuff. And it comes out in an output. And there's a technician that sits there and marks up the output to decide what is stage 1, what's stage 2, what's stage 3, what's REM, what kind of sleep disorders does this person have, what's going on effectively in the output of this data. And the thing is, there's been studies around this. You take 2 technicians with the same data, and there's high variability about what the technicians will mark up, right? So what I'm saying is that when we say polysomnography is the gold standard, yes, it's the gold standard in the sense that it gives you the most amount of data and the most accuracy of that data. But the actual result is not reality, right? So like when you're saying that your device compares favorably to polysomnography, polysomnography is not objective truth. It is a subjective understanding of somebody's condition, and it's highly variable. So the point is, like, you should not be looking at this data and taking it seriously. You just shouldn't. There's no, like, in no world should you look at your sleep score and believe that it's telling you anything meaningful about your sleep. It's not, right? So like in this world that we exist in that data landscape, what can you do that's productive, right? And I think one of the most interesting things that you can do is identify to people what is disturbing their sleep at night, right? So for example, a lot of trackers, they stop at what's happening in your body. But one of the things that we did with the Sleepbuds is that we said, okay, we're going to have actually like environmental sensors. So this is the light sensor, for example. This is the microphone that can judge noise, right? There's a temperature sensor in here as well. And so what we're doing is we're monitoring the environment, because the temperature can affect your sleep. Like, is your room cool enough? The noise level can affect your sleep. Like, is your room quiet enough? The light levels can affect your sleep. Is your room dark enough? And you might say, Rock, I have it on pat, like I have it down, it's okay. My normal bedroom, it's quiet enough, it's cool enough, it's dark enough. But what about when you're traveling? What about when you go to a hotel room? Right? Like, is that cool enough? Is that quiet enough? Is that dark enough? And most likely the answer is going to be no, it's not. Or like, you don't know. You don't have enough data to know because you're not awake while you're in a hotel room, right? And so we can analyze this for you and show you, hey, there were temperature fluctuations in the room, and that looks like it affected your sleep. It looks like it took you from one stage of sleep to another stage of sleep, right? Which could be impacting your sleep. Or there was your partner started snoring at 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. It's like that seemed to impact your sleep. There was light that was coming through the curtains earlier than you expected. That seemed to disturb you. You had these micro awakenings through you can show people what is affecting their sleep and tie it to how their body is responding to the external factors. And that, I think, is one of the most important things. So we have this concept of the nightly report, right? So that we call it the incident report. It's like, what are the incidents that are happening in the night that are affecting your sleep? So this is a core preview into how we're thinking about and designing the sleep feature. It's going to be fundamentally different than what you're getting from an Aura or a Whoop or an Apple Watch, because we have a fundamentally different outlook and philosophy on it.
So I have to say I'm very much looking for the feature to be in the app so I can try it out. Is there a timeline associated with that?
We're trying to get the features out by the kind of tracking features out by Q1 of next year.
Okay. Well, looking forward to it indeed. I wanted to wrap up the discussion on a personal front. I wanted to ask you how is your sleep?
So my sleep is generally good. There are a few things that disturb my sleep currently that are unfortunately very hard to avoid, which is I have a 17-month-old son, and sometimes he wakes up during the night and I have to go help him out. So other than that, I generally sleep pretty well.
Well, congratulations. I think that is a good reason to disrupt the sleep. And I have heard from some of my friends that have become dads recently that, it's an interesting part of the journey, but well-deserved. And I think that it's very, joyful part of life. So I think a strong reason why to get the sleep disrupted.
I think fatherhood is far more joyful than I was led to believe. So when I was a kid, it was drilled into me like kids are a hardship. Kids are a hardship. Like wait as long as possible to have kids. Like, you know, they'll limit your freedom, they'll limit your potential, what you're able to do, and all this stuff. And like, okay, whatever. But like the message that gets lost is how much joy parenthood can bring. And maybe that's not for every person. You know, everybody's circumstances are different. In my circumstance specifically, fatherhood has brought me a lot of joy. And yes, there are things that are plenty hard about it, but there's a lot of things that are beautiful and wonderful about it as well.
Just wanted to prepare you a little bit into what's coming. Recently heard from my friend, small kids, small problems. Bigger kids, bigger problems. I mean, I can't wait to talk to you at some point in the future to ask you whether that statement is true or not. We'll find out.
I have a feeling there is a lot of truth in that statement. So we'll find out. Lubo, it's been wonderful to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Great discussion, and I'll catch you next time.
Catch you next time. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be very thankful for any comments or feedback. It always is very appreciated on our end when we hear back from people tuning in to the show. And I'll be looking forward to catching you next time.